Hey, what's going on, Guardians? My name is TheBlackLink, and as we wind up another week of Faction Rallies, going to be seeing the Victory Week starting off tomorrow on Tuesday. I just wanted to take a little bit of time to give some of my opinions on the changes that have made their way into Faction Rallies, what I like about some of the things that have changed, and of course, the biggest topic of interest, the Renown system, and how it incentivizes and disincentivizes certain gameplay methods and modes within Destiny 2. Now, let's go ahead and just jump on into this. This is all just kind of coming off the cuff right off the top of my head, so I'm going to try to I'll try to moderate it and keep it relatively short. So Faction Rally, it's back around. They've got a bunch of new things tied to it. This is actually the second Faction Rally in Season 3. And, you know, there's some different stuff there. We've got some new ornaments, we've got some new weapons and armor, we've got some new challenges and whatnot tied to the factions, and all of that's good. I guess we can start this conversation off with the rewards. I like that we've got, you know, some new ornaments and whatnot. I love the new system of, I said new armor earlier, really what you get in this is new armor ornaments within these factions. I love that if you've got the base Season 2 armor, you can just take that and then start earning ornaments with the factions this time around. That's a system that I love. I do hope with Season 4 starting up with Forsaken, if they're going to be continuing Faction Rallies then, I do hope we get a new base armor set to collect, and then for Faction Rallies and seasons after that, they do the same thing with this armor ornament, where if you've got the base armor, then all you have to do is complete some specific challenges for your characters that will unlock the ornament for you. I think that's a fantastic incentive to get your characters to run content, basically to get you to play on your Hunter and run stuff, to get you to play on your Titan and run stuff. I love that this system incorporates gear that you've already got, because there's really no big difference between, you know, having this new ornament be its own separate armor set versus the armor set from Season 2. You know, armor doesn't really have anything special tied to it within Destiny 2 other than the mods that are available on it, so there's nothing really too interesting there. So I think being able to have a base armor set for factions that you then upgrade with different ornaments, I'm perfectly fine with that system. I'd be really happy to see if they move forward with that. Now, that being said, I am definitely bummed that when it comes to factions and Iron Banner, that the base armor isn't purchasable anymore. I actually had kind of a stink about that. Thankfully, we've learned in recent weeks, Bungie came out and clarified that that's going to be a thing moving forward. Like, Iron Banner and factions are going to be selling the base armor sets in subsequent events moving forward. They just couldn't get that in. It apparently had some sort of coding issue within Season 3, so they had to take it out for these previous faction rallies. But thankfully, that's not going to be a problem moving forward. Now, in terms of rewards, we have this reward tier system here with the factions where, you know, you can get different ornaments for doing challenges, you can get different, or access to some of the new weapons by reaching certain ranks, you know, reaching rank 5, 10, 15, 20, stuff like that. And of course, they tied in exotic armor ornaments to each faction, and more importantly, an exotic catalyst. Now, this has been both a point of grinding for a lot of people. You know, everybody's trying to grind to rank 50, which I think is great. That's a great incentive, tying these exotic catalysts into the factions. It's a great incentive for people to get on and actually play during faction rally weeks. But I will say, if I had one complaint about this, it's that I wish specific catalysts weren't tied to specific factions. I kind of wish it was sort of like the Vanguard Mentor missives back in Destiny 1, or even the exotics that you get for completing story missions in Destiny 2. You get to rank 50 with whatever faction you choose to pledge to, and then boom, you get 3 options. You get to choose basically which catalyst you want to pick up. It could just be like an automatic thing. Tying specific catalysts to specific factions, it kind of guarantees that we know really the order in which those factions are basically going to be pledged to and subsequently probably win. We knew Dead Orbit was going to win the first time around. Graviton Lance is at the top of its game right now. It's by far one of the most popular weapons in the game, so tying that catalyst to it, this whole system of having catalyst there is supposed to incentivize choice. You know, you choose which weapon's the most important to you. Well, you choose that faction to grind for, but I don't really think it had that sort of effect. It just made it so that, okay, everybody's going to choose Dead Orbit, then everybody's going to choose Future War Cult, then everybody's going to choose New Monarchy. So it really doesn't make too much of a difference when it comes down to brass tacks. It kind of made it so that you're supporting the faction that has the current weapon or exotic weapon catalyst you want, rather than supporting the faction that you like. Which it's overall just kind of funny, since Faction Rally as a whole is supposed to be about picking your favorite faction and just sort of running with them. But I like it. I like that they're tying stuff like this to the events that we're having within Destiny 2. Having these grindable exotic catalysts at rank 50 is definitely great incentive to jump in and run those public events and whatnot. So I like the reward system overall within the Faction Rallies. I still think it could be improved a little bit. Hopefully with Forsaken and moving forward, we're going to get some new weapon models and armor models and all that kind of stuff in, so that everything isn't just a reskin of Season 1 gear, because that's still kind of a problem moving forward. But overall, I like the reward system for Faction Rallies. I feel like it gives you mostly enough to grind for. Where I have some issues is what you're doing to grind. And this, of course, ties directly into the Renown system. Now, let me say first things first. I like Renown. I like the idea of it. Bungie initially, it seems like Bungie came up with the idea for Renown based on what we as players were doing in previous Faction Rallies. If you can remember, Lost Sectors have always been the #1 way to grind Faction Rallies, thanks to some glitches and whatnot of being able to refresh chests within those private instances, so you could just get hundreds, sometimes thousands of tokens within an hour or two. And Bungie initially tried to nerf that. I look at the Renown system as them kind of leaning into the Lost Sector grind, because Renown primarily affects Lost Sectors. Of course, if you don't know what Renown is, when you're playing Faction Rally, if you're wearing faction gear or not, if you go into a public space and do public events, heroic public events, or take down high-value targets that'll pop up sequentially, just out in the wilds, you'll get Renown, which will cause your pledged faction symbol to pop up behind you, and it has some effects on you. It stacks up to 5, and every stack continually lowers the damage that you do to enemies, but increases the damage that enemies do to you. But it also does something good. When you open up chests inside Lost Sectors, the more Renown you have, the more tokens you get. This was done in an effort to keep Lost Sectors farmable. They know people are going to farm Lost Sectors, so they're going to, they want to lean into that and say, okay, this is the content you want to play. We're going to make it a little bit more interesting for you and hopefully a little bit more lucrative, while also trying to incentivize running off and doing public events and whatnot. And for the most part, I like that. What I dislike about it is that Renown is kind of this thing that's just turned on and you can't do anything about it. Let me paint a picture for you. How many of you out there have been running maybe escalation protocol or something? You get to like rank 5 or rank 6 and a public event starts up. You got to do the public event in order to continue the escalation protocol round. You complete it, you get that heroic done. Boom, you've got 4 to 5 stacks of Renown now, and round 6 or round 7 bosses are just getting ready to pop up and absolutely destroy you. So in between that 55 seconds you get in between the public event and the escalation protocol, you're what? You're jumping off the cliff, you're trying to suicide so that you can drop that Renown. Renown can definitely be frustrating. It's also super frustrating in certain public events, like the Cabal mining rig, where with the heat shield coming up, that's a public event where it's really easy to die in. Of course, dying takes away 1 stack of your Renown, so if you're soloing some public events, those can become super duper frustrating. And there are a lot of players who just don't want to have to deal with Renown. They might just be out doing their flashpoints or something, and they don't want to have to deal with the debuff there. So I definitely think there's some fine-tuning that can be done. Renown creates some pretty frustrating experiences. I'd like to think, as a solution here, I think tying Renown into a system somewhat like the auras that you can get from wearing specific emblems, I think that would be a good way to handle this. When you pledge to a faction, you're granted automatically that faction's emblem. I think Renown should be tied to that. If you have the emblem equipped, boom, that's what triggers you gaining Renown out in the wilds. That way you can still wear the armor, and the armor, of course, the more faction armor you wear, ramps up the amount of Renown you get from completing activities just out in PvE. But that way, if you want to turn the Renown system off, you just unequip the emblem. I think that'd be a really good middle ground to find there for people who enjoy the Renown system, who want to go farm out public events and high value targets and then Lost Sectors, which again, I like that change. But for people who don't want to deal with all that, they could just take off the emblem and not have to worry about it. I think that'd be a pretty good middle ground. But my other big problem with Renown and with the Faction Rally system as it currently is that the emphasis is 100% completely on public events and Lost Sectors. Yeah, sure, you've got your daily challenges, and you can go into like PvP and get most of those done pretty quickly for a nice chunk of faction tokens. But outside of that, you're not really incentivized to go and run strikes. You're not really incentivized to go and play PvP outside of those daily challenges again. And I think that's a bit of a shame. Strikes, I've talked about many times. Strikes used to be the premier PvE activity back in Destiny 1. If you're somebody who came in Destiny 2, this is going to blow your mind because heroic strikes sometimes aren't that fun in D2, but back in Destiny 1, that was how you spent the majority of your time. Strikes were so much fun, and it was where you went to level up your factions the quickest, and PvP was certainly a viable option to that, so... With Faction Rallies moving forward, I don't know if Faction Rallies are going to be the same when Forsaken comes out. But moving forward, I would love to see a greater emphasis on allowing players to basically play the content that they prefer, so that they don't have to just go and run public events on Titan and Lost Sectors on Titan for the optimal grind. If you're somebody who prefers PvP, I would love it if you got a larger base stack of tokens outside of PvP. Maybe if you win a PvP match, you get 10 tokens. If you lose, you get 5. And they could have a similar system for strikes and heroic strikes where you get more for completing heroic strikes and then, a little bit less for completing normal strikes. And maybe a bigger patch of faction tokens for completing nightfalls and stuff like that. And to tie into that, certainly later on this month in update 1.2.3, we're getting the return of bounties and missions and stuff like that coming to Destiny 2. I think that could be a great way to tie into strikes and PvP, having specific objectives being offered and bounties from factions that will grant you a large amount of tokens. Maybe every single day, or they could be weekly or whatever. I think it'd be a great incentive to get people into, anything other than just the patrol spaces to farm up tokens for their faction. The Faction Rally system as it is much better than it was back in vanilla Destiny 2, but I do believe that they've got they've still got some things to do. There's some fine-tuning to do before it really becomes a worthwhile event within Destiny 2. Although, hopefully, I'm not sure if this is going to be something that happens, but when Forsaken comes out, I would prefer it if factions still kind of went back to the way they were in Destiny 1, where you could pledge to a different faction basically every single week and earn stuff towards that. I like the notion of Faction Rallies being a specific event within Destiny 2, but I think a lot of players, especially players who had experience back in D1, would prefer being able to really enjoy that whenever they wanted. And maybe keep Faction Rallies as a special week-long event, much in the same vein that it is right now, but just tie specific, unique rewards that you can only get during the event week. And of course the event winner's weapon and stuff like that. But alright, there we go. Those are just some of my ideas about the way Faction Rallies are currently performing within Destiny 2. I do believe the event is way better than it used to be. There's certainly a reason to grind it out, and if you're someone who maybe isn't too interested in Faction Rallies, don't worry, you're not missing out on too much with the exotic catalyst. It's been confirmed that those will be available via other methods later on. So if you didn't make that grind to 50 this time around or during the last Faction Rally, you don't need to panic. You'll have options to get those exotic catalysts later on. But I do like that these types of rewards have been tied in right now because it is a good incentive to jump in and actually play Faction Rally. And with random rolls and all the new weapons and stuff and armor stuff that we're going to be getting with Forsaken, they've got a really good opportunity for Faction Rallies and just the faction system as a whole moving forward. But anyways, those are my thoughts, Guardians. Be sure to leave me yours down in the comment section below. Again, this was just a little bit of a rant video to get some of the things in my head out onto the screen, so thanks for putting up with me. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to drop a like, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the stuff we're putting out. And thanks once again for dealing with 13 minutes of me rambling about Faction Rallies. But I'm out for now. As always, I'm TheBlackLink. You Guardians, stay frosty.